as soon as possible when I accomplish actions and objectives that I have in place right now. It means engaging with international actors directly, one-on-one, which I had not been able to do because, as you're aware, I had been banned from leaving Venezuela for over 12 years. And also because I believe there is a lot of organization that has to be done internationally. So I'm doing the job abroad, and as soon as I can, I will go back to a country in which many things are taking place as we speak.
Do you need America to facilitate that? Do you need American permission to go home to Venezuela?
Oh, no, not permission. But certainly I would say that we desire, we will have coordination.
And how will you know when you can return?
Well, as I said, many things are happening. There are a lot of things that I'm in the process of accomplishing. And when the right moment arrives, I will tell the Venezuelan people that it's time to go back home. And not only me. I have to say, Mary Louise, that you are aware that thousands of Venezuelan political leaders have been forced to flee. They want to go home. And millions of Venezuelans, almost 9 million, are scattered all around the world and have a profound desire to go back home. And that will only take place. All those millions will only go back home when they're sure they have certainty that we're moving into a transition to democracy, because it's not only about economic recovery. It's basically about having trust that we will have democracy and freedom and opportunities for them and their children.
Maria Corina, I just want to ask the blunt question to allow you to respond. The state of play is that you are not in Venezuela. The U.S. is driving the agenda in your country right now. You're not there. You don't control the oil. You don't control the army. To those who wonder if you have been sidelined, what do you say? Have you been sidelined?
Well, I've heard that for years, because at the end, you usually get profound analysis and scenarios and formulas that have dozens of variables, but always leave one on the side, which is the most important of all, and that's the people. And we've come to this point because the people of Venezuela decided to be free and decided to risk everything in order to have a democratic country to which their children could come back.
But do you have any leverage from outside the country?
From outside and from inside. And from inside. I mean, I was in hiding during 16 months, and we never stopped working, organizing, and communicating. We have a network of citizens organized that were 1 million volunteers for the electoral process, and that have turned into an underground real-time communication platform of individuals ready to act civically and moving ahead into a democratic transition, and to support this process as well.
So Chris Wright, the U.S. Energy Secretary, was in Venezuela this week. He is, I believe, the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit since Nicolas Maduro was ousted. He met Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president, at Miraflores, the presidential palace. There were photographs of them smiling and shaking hands and a big band playing. I just wonder what was going through your head as you watched that.
Well, just think where we were 5 weeks ago and where we are right now. Everybody thought it was impossible to have Maduro face his international law, and where he is right now. So what's important to think is what Ms. Rodriguez is thinking right now after what they've said. They know, the world knows, they are part of a criminal structure. She's an essential part of the cartel. She was the one who was the architect and overlooked the torture system and the repressive structure. And she is the main link with Russia, Iran, Cuba, and so on. Everybody knows that. So we are in a process in which the remains of the regime are following orders from the United States in a phase where they are being part of the dismantling of this regime. What we believe now is that we need to move forward into this transition once the rest of the repressive structure is further dismantled and weakened. And that's the direction in which we should move ahead now.
But I guess my question again, what is it like to be sitting outside Venezuela, watching the U.S. shaking hands and making deals and signing contracts with people who you just described as running a cartel and remnants of the regime? These are the same, Delcy Rodriguez and others, who were leading the country and crushed the will of the Venezuelan people in the presidential election of 2024.
We all know this is not sustainable. We all know this is a phase in which the restoration of institutions is just starting. As I said, it starts with the dismantling of the repressive structure. But in a country that currently is located in the last place worldwide in rule of law, the only way you can have long-term massive investments, not only in oil and gas, but in all other sectors in which Venezuela has unique and huge potential, requires legitimacy in the institutions, required constitutional compliance, and certainly the support of the people. And what we are watching, and we have fought for this very long, is a process taking place and advancing at a pace that we certainly want to move ahead and to accelerate, and we're doing our part outside and inside.
So you mentioned oil and gas. Let's stay on that for a moment. The U.S. imposed order that seems to be emerging is oil, gas, business first, and then we'll deal with democracy and human rights and free speech and all the rest of it. Do you agree that that appears to be how things are taking shape? And B, is that the right order?
Well, we believe that many things have to be addressed simultaneously in Venezuela because of the degree of destruction and simultaneous crisis we have. We have a humanitarian crisis, we have economic crisis, we have a public service crisis, and certainly a security one. So all these issues need to be addressed simultaneously. The Secretary of State has been clear in saying that these phases can overlap, and that's part of the work we're doing right now to be sure.
But in terms of the sequencing, I'm sorry to jump in terms of the sequencing, you're okay with that it's the Energy Secretary who's the first senior U.S. official to set foot that we know of in Venezuela since last month?
Well, to be clear, the first actions that actually took place were the initial release of political prisoners, and that's taking place as we speak. 480 have been released so far. Still, there are over 800 in prison, but this is huge. And we're starting to see that the consequence of this release of political prisoners is a reaction from Venezuelan society, mobilizing, gathering, demanding in the streets, something that was unthinkable a month ago, unthinkable. So we are seeing certain progress. Of course, it's not enough. Of course, we want this to move further and more and accelerate it. And that's precisely our job right now. The Venezuelan people inside demanding for, civic rights to be totally restored, because at the end, you cannot talk about a transition if you have repression. And that's what we are demanding right now. And that's what we demand from the international community to support us at this stage.
Speaking of political prisoners, just this week, one of your closest political allies was arrested by heavily armed men wearing civilian clothes. He was held without anyone knowing his whereabouts. I'm talking about Juan Pablo Guanipa. He is now under house arrest, is my understanding. Is he okay? Do you know?
Actually, I spoke with Juan Pablo last night. As you say, you're right. He's one of our closest colleagues and friend. He had been detained for almost a year, and he was released last week. And the same day he was released, a couple of hours later, he was taken and disappeared again. He is in his house right now, but he's under house arrest. His house is surrounded by security personnel. But I want to highlight one thing, Maria Luisa. I've been speaking with dozens of Venezuelans that have been excarcerated in the last days and hours. If there's something that I'm, really impressed and moved, is the determination and will that they have when they go out. The first thing they do is that they call me in the car and they tell me, what do I have to do right now? And I tell them, you have to go home, you have to hug your mother, you have to take a bath. And then they say, no. What do I have to do regarding my work, regarding Venezuelan liberation? And this is a kind of strength and energy that cannot be stopped. Venezuela will be free because of its people.
Although, in fairness, going home and hugging your mother is always good advice at all times and for all of us. Where does all this leave Edmundo Gonzalez, who won the presidential election in 2024, is now in exile in Spain? Do the results of that election just go away and we start over, or what happens?
But absolutely not. On the contrary. I mean, what took place on July 28th, 2024, was the most important milestone in Venezuelan democratic history. I mean, this is extraordinary. We not only won by a landslide, but we proved the world that the will of the people and the military is to move ahead into a transition to democracy. And I want to insist this here. I mean, in Venezuela, the electoral process is overlooked and protected by military. And that day, they were ordered to stop us from getting the tally sheets, and they disobeyed. So this is a proof that the wide majority of the armed forces and the police support us. Edmundo Gonzalez is the legitimate elect president, and precisely what gives legitimacy to what took place starting in January and what will happen in a transitional process and a transitional government that eventually will have general elections is because the people spoke and popular sovereignty was expressed.
You said eventually general elections. You created a little bit of a stir when you made comments, I think a week or two ago, giving some kind of timeline for when elections would happen in Venezuela, and the White House jumped in and said, not that, not so fast, we'll let you know. What is the timeline for general elections in Venezuela?
Well, one thing is what technically is possible, and the other is what political feasible. What is technically possible, given the situation of the Venezuelan infrastructure and the destruction of the electoral registry, and how elections have been totally fraudulent, and we have no results whatsoever, is to start dismantling the electronic system and building one that can give the Venezuelan population absolute trust in the results, and that you give the right for all Venezuelans inside and abroad to vote. So technically, we can have free and fair elections in the moment you start the process in 40 weeks. Certainly, there are political conditions that have to take place before and during that process. If you ask the Venezuelan people, I mean, over 80, 90% would say we want to move ahead into legitimate political process. We want elections. We want to participate. And that's part of our job. I mean, Venezuelans inside and abroad demanding what we believe our country is ready to do. And I want to insist here because I know there is a lot of concern regarding, the possibly violence or disruptions in a transition and comparisons between Venezuela and previous Middle East and other regions' experiences. I want to insist on this. Venezuela has unique conditions. We have a democratic culture. We had a 50 years of democracy. We have a civil society that is cohesive, united, with no religious, racial, or regional factions. We have a legitimate leadership, a united opposition, and we have the support, as I said before, of the majority of the armed forces. So a transition to democracy will be orderly, will be peacefully, and as soon as it takes place, it would be better for not only for Venezuelans, but also for the region and certainly for the United States.
So is the short answer to when Venezuela will hold elections as soon as possible, but we don't know?
Yes, that's true, but we do know what we have to do, and we are doing it in order for that to take place.
I'm going to open it to the floor in just a minute, but I have one more question, which is, I'm just curious what your contact is with the U.S. administration, with the White House, with Secretary Rubio. How often do you talk to him?
Well, we have permanent communication with different levels and actors, not only in the U.S. government, but also with Congress and other sectors of the United States society. Very, very frequent with all these sectors. And I want to insist in one thing. It's remarkable, given that, you know, the dynamics today of the United States, that Venezuela is a bipartisan issue because of the national security dimension of the conflict in place in my country. I've been in contact with members of Congress on both parties, and it is absolutely clear that it is a top priority for the national security of the United States, for the stability of the region, and even for different agendas. I mean, migration, energy security, trade. This is a win-win situation for whoever has concerns on all these issues taking place right now.
All right. I know you all have questions for Maria Corina Machado, so bring them on. We've got microphones. If you signal me, raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you. Yes, sir. If you would identify yourself and keep your questions short, that would be great.
Of course. Kenneth Barragan from the United States. Señora Machado, un placer y que viva Venezuela. My question is, for the millions of Venezuelans who are outside of Venezuela, what is your message to them, and what tangible actions do you recommend that they take to support the process that will be unfolding?
Thank you so much for that question. I have to tell you something. I am impressed and moved in what I've seen so far in terms of the support of individuals, citizens from other countries that jump to me, run to me, and tell me that what's going on in Venezuela, it's a matter of, you know, existential priority for the rest of the region. People from Nicaragua, from Cuba, from Colombia, from Brazil, I mean, all around the region. We need our talent. We need our children to come back home. Venezuelans that are working nowadays in the oil sector in the Middle East or in Canada, people that have being forced to flee and have started their own business but dream to come back home. So imagine for the Venezuelan economy to move ahead and to be able to take advantage of our potential, we not only need billions and billions of investment that require rule of law and so on, but also these Venezuelans to come back home. And I insist, they desperately want to do it, but they only will come back when they have, you know, certainty that a democratic process is in place. We need a date for elections, and we need certainty that freedom and respect for all will take place.
Other questions?
Thank you. My name is Michael Keating, based in Brussels. What are your expectations of Europe?
Well, that's a very good question. We certainly have had support from the European Parliament throughout these years, you know, all along the political spectrum, something we very much appreciate. Certainly, several countries that have been very active in terms of denouncing the crimes against humanity and the corruption networks that operate in Venezuela. We nowadays believe we need much more than that, because we need, as I said, to move from, joint statements to actions. As we had said during years, we need to block the criminal cash flows that the regime has and that are used for repression and corruption and further enlargement of their criminal activities. We need to block those flows. We need to support targeted measures towards the groups that today control repression in Venezuela. This is a very important issue because these are elite groups, vital few that need to be isolated. I mean, we need to liberate Venezuelan armed forces of these groups that are composed by a few thousand individuals, only a few thousand individuals, very highly armed and trained, and we need to neutralize and isolate them. Also, we need to support the removal of extra hemisphere operational penetration in Venezuela that has been also identified. And finally, in the asset recovery strategy and efforts, because we've identified billions and billions of stolen assets that we expect to be repatriated to Venezuela in order to rebuild our institutions.
Other questions? I can jump in while people think of one. I don't see a hand. If there is a hand and I'm missing you, yep, one back here.
Me again, only because no one else is asking a question. What about China? China has been very important as an investor in Venezuela. Do you see a future for Chinese engagement in Venezuela going forward?
Well, I'm sure you're aware that China lent over $60 billion to the Chavista regime and was very concerned what they were not being paid. That has been reducing significantly, and today we estimate it's around $16 billion. And certainly China has identified the huge potential in rare minerals and other natural resources Venezuela has. But as we say, we are moving into a situation in which we want full compliance, full transparency in terms of the relations with extra or international actors, not only extra-continental actors. And that's something that has been lacking in the relations with China from day one. So, we are in a process in which we need to dismantle the presence of foreign regimes, Cuba, Russia, Iran, currently infiltrated into Venezuelan institutions, not only economic activity, including the military, and dismantling also the technological platforms that have used for espionage and terror of the Venezuelan people.
In the back?
Thank you very much. My name is Toby. I go to Brown University. I was wondering, what could younger people do to help out, in your opinion?
I love your question. Thank you so much. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but 2 days ago, for the first time in almost 2 years, we saw young Venezuelans in our, 23 universities all around the country calling for civil society to speak out in support of our political prisoners and the total liberation of them. This was very courageous, very brave on their behalf. And what we saw that day is something unthinkable just a few weeks ago. So what's taking place in Venezuela is huge in terms of the repercussions it is already having in the region. I mean, when we dismantle the regime, the criminal regime in Venezuela, Cuba will be next. Nicaragua will follow. For the first time in history, we will have the Americas free of communism and dictatorship. This is huge regarding, the contribution to humanity. And I think this is a moment in which we require young people speaking out, because the fight for freedom in Venezuela is a huge contribution also for freedom around the world. And we will make this happen. I want to insist on this. We will never give up. What we have done as a society is remarkable. We've heard all along the way, Gabi, that this was impossible to achieve. And finally, here we are at the threshold of freedom because of people's will and organization, and certainly because we have the support and leadership of the US government at this point.
May I follow up on something you just noted? You said Cuba will be next. Nicaragua will be next. I just wonder, does anything about that give you pause in terms of the precedent that is set of regime change? I mean, what happened in Venezuela, whether you like Nicolas Maduro or not, and I think we know where you stand on that, but it was one country sending in special forces to remove the leader who was running that country. I'm talking about more widely in the region. Anything about that? We're talking a lot about the global world rules-based order here. It's hard to square these.
But I want to make this clear. And where does the election on July 24, 2024, July 28, 2024 stands for? I mean, there was an election under the rules of the regime. Conditions so extremely unjust that I'm sure those in the audience who have never accepted participating, we did. We overcame every obstacle. We had no media, we had no money, but we had organization, and we won. And we proved it with 85% of the original tally sheets scanned for the world to see. So regime change was mandated by the people. Nicolas Maduro was not a legitimate president. He was the head of an international criminal structure that was, persecuting, torturing, and destroying innocent people. An invasion had taken place in Venezuela. What we had asked is support so that law could be enforced. And that's precisely what happened on January the 3rd. So I think it is time for people around the world to call things by their name, as they are. The previous structures that we had internationally did not work. I mean, over 20,000 people have been detained illegally during the Chavista Maduro regime. Over 11,000 have been executed by parallel structures of the regime. Over 2,000 cases of torture, including foreign individuals that are recently given testimony of what they suffered. Camilo Castro, a Frenchman, saying how he was even sexually assaulted while he was in prison, disappeared for months. I mean, this is still happening in Venezuela. So this is not about changing a regime for the sake of one country. This is supporting the just cause for democracy and freedom of a nation that has demonstrated its will to reunite in freedom.
So first of all, thank you. For the context, for the clarification, and I just want to say I'm sorry for some of the horrors that your country has lived through that you've just described. I'm sorry on behalf of the people who have lived through those and their families. I do want to make sure I understand what your thinking is in terms of the question of precedent. Would you be okay with the U.S. going to another country in the Western Hemisphere and removing the leader of a different country if that leader did not come to power through what is internationally recognized as free and fair election?
I am demanding not only the United States, but all democratic countries around the world to support the people who around the world are struggling to live in peace with dignity and justice. And it is very nice to hear in different forums around the world leaders and actors support these values and then turn around and make business with those criminal regimes that oppress innocent people. That might sound well, but it's a tragedy that is still happening. So I do support, and we ask for leaders, not only in governments, in parliaments, in media, in business sector, to support those people that are fighting, organizing in order to have freedom and democracy, and to respect the will of the people wherever they are around the world.
I've got more, but let's show me your hands if you've got them. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to comment on your point on whether Maria Corina or anyone else is okay with the president. I'm the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Panama. And I think the clear precedent that's established here is that us, including myself, as an international community, failed Venezuela, as we're failing Nicaragua, as we're failing other countries. So I think the point is not really, it's not ideal what the U.S. did. Clearly it's not, and it goes against a rule-based order. But it was filling a gap that we as an international community have left. So I think the most important thing here is that the way that is established right now and the way the rule-based system that we have is not allowing, when there's a clear dictatorship, for anything to take place other than waiting around and multiple statements that we all give in support but turn to nothing.
Thank you for that. Maria Corina, do you want to respond?
Well, thank you very much for your remark. I want to insist in one point. I've heard many times in the last days refer to international law. And I wonder what some people think about it. Is international law designed to protect and give and whitewash brutal regimes, or is international law designed to enforce the law and protect civilian population from tragedies such as the one it's been happening in Venezuela? I think international law should be applied to protect sovereignty, such as what the Venezuelan people expressed, and to support our rightful and just desire to live in freedom, not to protect and defend the criminals that oppress the people.
Speaking of international law, should the U.S. keep blowing up alleged drug boats in the Caribbean?
Well, we have asked for years to cut the flows of the drug network that had been flowing into Venezuela and used for repression and used to enhance this repressive apparatus. I believe not only the United States, but all other European countries finally are acting in a coalition to have an anti-narcotic operation, wide anti-narcotic operation in the Caribbean and the Pacific. And I hope other countries join in. So this is not a temporary operation, but that a true message for these organizations that they will be forced to face international law. So I believe this is something that should be enhanced with the participation of other countries as well, countries from the Caribbean and South America as well.
I have one last question. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. One more.
You just detailed the many crimes that the regime has perpetrated against Venezuelans. And so I'm wondering, in your view, what should be the repercussions of the perpetrators, including the current acting presidents?
That's a very good question. And I will take advantage of it also to thank organizations such as the Inter-American Commission and CURT, the High Commissioner of Human Rights of the UN, the fact-finding mission that has done a remarkable job documenting and publishing the tragedies of Venezuela. I mean, I'm talking about thousands of cases that have even been submitted to the International Criminal Court. This means that once the truth is known, we will see one of the most cruel, repressive periods in history that took place and took over a country. We believe that we need to move ahead into strengthening our judicial system, that the truth should be known, victims should be repaired, but certainly in order to move ahead and have most of these of the individuals that want to support the regime integrated into our society, justice must happen first. We're not looking for revenge. We will not persecute. We will grant the rights that were denied to us.
I'll bring us to a close by asking this. 5 years from now, when you're president, first, we hope you'll come to Munich and take questions here and be able to travel the world freely. But my question is, what role do you see a democratic Venezuela playing in the region and on the world stage?
Thank you very much for that question. Our goal, our challenge is to turn a country that has been the criminal hub of the Americas into the energy hub of the Americas, into the technology hub of the Americas, but also into the democracy example for the rest of the world. A country that has its institutions in ruins, that can stand up and be once again the home of millions, not only Venezuelans that want to come back, but citizens from all over the world that will find an unique opportunity, unique, extraordinary opportunity, not only because there is a business opportunity of over 1.7 trillion in different sectors, but because Venezuelans and Venezuelan people are really extraordinary. So what we see and we need to be is not only an example and inspiration to others, but assure that future generations of Venezuelans learn from our mistakes, but also of our incredible achievements. To see that that freedom is not free, that you can lose democracy in less than one generation. And once that happens, it is very costly to bring it back. So this is a moment in which we can show the world that our society has learned very hard lessons, is prepared to move ahead. And once we have a democracy, to take care of it with strong institutions and trusted leadership. So I know that we'll be able, Marie-Louise, to see each other much before those 5 years. I look forward to host you in a free Venezuela and prove the world that when a society is determined to be free, nothing can stop it. So thank you very much for this opportunity to all of you.
Thank you. We look forward to it. Maria Corina, thank you. All right, thank you.